The U.S. economy added 139,000 jobs in May, even in the face of Trump's ongoing tariff war and economic uncertainty. The unemployment rate remains unchanged at 4.2%. The economy is showing signs of weakness as it only added 139,000 jobs in May, demonstrating a softness in the labor market on the eve of the potential impact of Trump's tariff war and ongoing uncertainty. The unemployment rate remains stubborn at 4.2%. So which is it? How we count jobs and employment in this country has been the subject of great debate, and the sides usually line up along ideological lines. Now, pundits on the right and the left will look for narratives to reinforce their positions depending upon who's in office. Once a month, the headlines last for about a day, and then we just move on and go about our business. Well, today I want to dig below the headlines, because there's a lot that isn't said when these figures are released. And then there are the footnotes. You gotta always read the footnotes.
UNFTR. A lot of the uncertainty that's created by the tariffs and other kind of chaotic management of the economy by the Trump administration is only going to start really impacting the labor market on a slower timeline.
The latest jobs report for May is out, and President Trump is taking to Truth Social, touting the, quote, great job numbers. Stock market up big and highlighting the billions pouring in from tariffs.
I guess the good news here is maybe the economy is stronger than we had been anticipating post-ADP.
I would like to point out something. With respect to this quote-unquote deteriorating job picture, the 3-month moving average of non-farm payrolls is 4,000 less than the 139,000 that we had today. So I just don't see that there's this, added negative impetus by all the headlines that are out there. I'm not saying that they're not all accurate and there's not uncertainty, but the market certainly seems to be much more adult about it than many of the analysts.
The big economic headline of the week was, of course, hiring data. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the country added 139,000 non-farm payroll jobs in May. But there was an interesting revision buried in the release that we should talk about. So let's take a look at the trend in this first chart. You can see that the unemployment rate is back to about 2017 levels, with the job market recovering from the COVID recession. So depending upon your ideological framework, you can make the case that the market is holding steady or that it's starting to bleed out. Now, it doesn't really matter whether it's beating estimates or not. What matters is how many people are working, what they're making relative to inflation, and if there are noticeable trends to the upside or downside. But there was something else in this report that got very little attention. And we'll let you know just how little these figures matter when they're released. So take a look at this little nugget that appears at the end of the release. Quote, the change in total non-farm payroll employment for March was revised down by 65,000 from 185,000 to 120,000. And the change for April was revised down by 30,000 from 177,000 to 147,000. With these revisions, employment in March and April combined is 95,000 lower than previously reported. Yeah, the Bureau of Labor Statistics revised March and April together down by 95,000 jobs total. So the prior months were pretty significantly overstated. The figures were already lighter than what economists predicted, and it'll be interesting to see if next month includes further revisions. But a couple more items to note regarding the data. Manufacturing jobs declined by 8,000 in May, which is already proof positive that you can't simply will manufacturing jobs back into existence with a fake tariff war if you spent the past 40 years dismantling the industrial base of the nation and have no clear industrial policy moving forward. The increases, by the way, were in healthcare and hospitality, just to further underscore the evidence that we've moved further along the Origi spectrum, so to speak, which we covered in prior episodes. There are still service sector gains, but we are fully in the financialization phase of our journey. Think about increases in healthcare and hospitality versus manufacturing this way. Healthcare and hospitality contribute to GDP because it's spending, right? But that's just money moving around from pocket to pocket. In this case, sick person to health provider, travel, leisure, and restaurant consumer to hospitality provider. But these are just money movers, not product originators, as in the case of manufacturing. But I digress. The other point of interest is that cuts to federal agencies, another 1,000 jobs that disappeared across the government sector in May, have many concerned that future data releases might be insufficient due to lack of resources. Now, this is especially true in the case of inflation data, so moving forward, we might not even have access to some of the real-time benchmark data that we've used all these years. That's a whole separate issue and threat that I don't think we spend enough time on in the Trump era. Data collection and the ability to build public policy around it is one of the hallmarks of a mature and successful nation. The fact that the Trump administration is targeting these agencies first and foremost is more than an administrative quirk. This is a systematic dismantling of the administrative state that contains evidence of wrongdoing and harm. And that is a hallmark of fascist regimes. But I digress again. So let's go back over some familiar territory to underscore the weaknesses in the labor market by looking at historical benchmarks while we have them and participation data. This will help draw a picture of where we are in the broader economy. Remember that the unemployment rate is a severe undercounting of actual employment activity. It's great for headlines, but it's not what economists and policymakers actually care about. What they look at is the labor participation rate, and the prime age labor participation rate specifically. Now, we've covered these before. The difference is that the former covers all people 18 and over who are gainfully employed and not on disability in school or in the military. And as of now, that figure is 62%. Now, this is the prime age labor force participation rate. Prime age is considered 25 to 54, and that figure is 83%, which remains a peak since the data was collected. So when you hear Jerome Powell say that the labor market remains strong, this is what he's talking about. And like I've said, we've covered this before in making the case for the second of the 5 non-negotiables of the left. Just go to UNFTR.com/5NN to review them if you haven't done so already. But today I want to go a little bit deeper into these numbers to break this up demographically even further. Take a look at the participation rate of those who are 55 and over. Now, first off, this chart is the literal story of neoliberalism. You see the fullness of the workforce, the need for all hands on deck after World War II as the country builds itself out of a deficit and the boom times begin. As the economy grows, and the social safety nets expand in parallel with rising incomes and retirements, the 55 and over crowd actually leaves the workforce and retires. But when the boomers come of age, and the effects of the Reagan and Clinton neoliberal policies kick in, you see the 55 and over crowd steadily rejoining the workforce. The only dip since then is around COVID, when so many boomers finally raised the "fuck this" flag and dipped. Now here's the part I want you to take notice of. Every year, there are more and more 55 and over citizens because the boomers are aging out. And you can see that the 55 plus numbers are still declining. So more people entering this demographic and fewer of them in the workforce. This would be a good thing if people were actually retiring with healthy savings, but according to AARP, there's something coming called the silver tsunami. More than half of boomers have less than $250,000 in savings, which means they will actuarially require Social Security to live. Back to Origi, however, now that we've fully financialized this economy and different skills are required to maintain relevance in the modern era, older Americans aren't just leaving the job market willingly, they're getting squeezed out. In our credit risk episode, we shared this graphic. That shows a recent uptick in unemployment among recent college graduates. Now, there's a couple of things lining up here, so let's switch to employment among 20 to 24-year-olds. Employment in this demographic hasn't been this low since the early 1970s, and no one's talking about it. The confluence here is actually frightening. First off, you see that this number has been steadily declining since the 1980s, and it hasn't recovered since the global financial crisis. But if AARP is warning of the silver tsunami, then we need a name for what's about to happen to this demographic. This demo, whether college grads or not, is the one that fills entry-level positions. So now consider what the CEO of Anthropic had to say about entry-level jobs.
I really worry, particularly at the entry level, that the AI models are very much at the center of what an entry-level human worker would do. And so it's hard to estimate, exactly what the impact would be. And there's always this question of adaptation. And these technology changes have happened before. But I think what is striking to me about this AI boom is that it's bigger and it's broader and it's moving faster than anything has before. And so compared to previous technology changes, I'm a little bit more worried about the labor impact simply because it's happening so fast that yes, people will adapt, but they may not adapt fast enough. And so there may be an adjustment.
So we have a savings tsunami among boomers who left the workforce en masse during COVID and are not returning in a meaningful way. A decline in participation among the youngest workers, which includes recent college graduates. And according to a collaborative report between MBO Partners, the Freelancers Union, and McKinsey Global Institute, between 25 and 35% of the national workforce is said to have engaged in non-standard or gig economy work, which equates to around 41 million people. So what's not being captured in the Fed data and the BLS data, for example, is how many people are living on the fringes of trackable employment, because the online platforms like Uber that we typically associate with gig work only tracks about 1% of total gig work in the United States. So there's a whole sub-economy out there of gig workers, part-timers, freelancers, hustlers, and off-the-book workers that are scratching to make ends meet. This is hardly the way to build an economy. Last chart, but it's an important one. The population is aging. We know this. But look at how the demographic shift lays out over the next decade. The biggest decline in absolute terms is in what the Fed considers prime age labor. So they can keep this game going for a while, claiming that the job market is strong because the prime age workers are gainfully employed. But if they keep dropping as a percentage of the whole, then this is just sleight of hand. If the total participation of those 18 and over right now is 62%, then what's it going to be in 10 years? Now, proponents of AI make the spurious claim that productivity will increase to such an extent that we won't need as many workers. And that's a good thing. Or that we can keep as many people that we have now employed, but just for fewer hours. So maybe we can have that 30-hour work week after all, and finally enjoy some free time while we make the same amount of money. Now, if you're one of those people, then I want you to do me a favor. Just find a mirror and look at yourself very, very closely. Now, ball up your fist and punch yourself in the face repeatedly until you can barely stand. And the reason I want you to look at yourself is so that you can see how ridiculous you are. If we continue down this corporatocracy, oligarchy, neo-feudal, corporate colonial, inverted totalitarian path, we haven't all kind of landed on a term for the post-neoliberal era yet. So I prefer corporate colonialism. Sheldon Mullen gave us inverted totalitarianism. Neo-feudalism's kind of catching on. You got Yanis Varoufakis with his techno-feudalism. There's all ways to kind of talk about how we're fucked in really classical terms. But the bottom line is we are fucked. The big corporations aren't going to pay you more to do less because AI increases productivity. And we've already talked at length about how AI, as the CEO of Anthropic is warning us about, isn't creative destruction in the way that we've gone through in the Schumpeter sense, where it takes generations to kind of turn over an economy through technology. This is creative implosion that, as he says, will eliminate half of entry-level jobs and generate potentially up to 20% unemployment. It's the type of economy that the 55 and over crowd will be unable to participate in. And it will be hostile to the 20 to 24-year-olds that fill entry-level positions. And if we look at recessions, by the way, historically, the normal ones or the shallow ones lead to like 1.5 to 3 million job losses. In the Great Recession, in the global financial crisis in 08 and 09, it was 8 million jobs that we lost. So this is why we're talking about building a civilian labor corps into our core policy demands to take over the Democratic Party and have an actual platform. But there's literally no one talking about it. Definitely not on the GOP side or on the Democratic side. No one. This labor force is already being decimated. The numbers are right there. Trump's tariff war, the immigration policy nightmare, the destruction of social safety nets in the administrative state is going to plunge us into a recession. His recklessness is going to kill countless people, and it's going to hit the red states first, as we posted about recently as well. There is no cohesive policy to curtail the impact of AI, and it's coming. And in so many ways, as evidenced by the younger demo and the older demo data, it's probably already here. Demographic shifts mean fewer people in the workforce and older people that require care. And what's the Trump administration doing to prepare for this unbelievably obvious, already happening right in front of our eyes actuarial reality? Dismantling the administrative state, taking away healthcare options for indigent and elderly people, and they're coming after Social Security and Medicare next under the guise of fiscal responsibility. But it's really because they want to line their own pockets. As I've said before, read Project 2025, it's all right there. Or now you can even brush up on Project Esther. That's the next thing that they've got cooking, which we'll talk about another time. To quote the estimable Gary Stevenson, read your Dickens, folks. The labor nightmare isn't coming, it's here. The data always tell the story. It just depends on which data you choose to look at. They want you to stay focused on the prime age labor participation rate and the quote-unquote unemployment rate because it suits their narrative today, and it will for the foreseeable future because it's a declining percentage of the whole. It's pretty clever, right? But this is Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the one that's right there in front of us. Within a decade, half of the population will not be employed. And that's why we need something like a civilian labor corps and why it has to be non-negotiable. And get this, man, the first 4 years of the decade that we're talking about, where all of these job losses are going to occur and we're going to get to 50% of the entire population not working, they belong to Trump. So think about it. If we're not prepared to make and meet this demand by the next election, then we can kiss the next 4 years goodbye as well. And these jobs aren't going to leave all at once. It's not like at the end of the decade, it's going to like, boop, all the jobs are gone. It's going to degrade and decline every year like a fucking mudslide, and we are not prepared. So let me channel some GOP talking points famously uttered by Eric Cantor after Obama swept the country and Republicans thought they'd never take power again. It's time to get out of the fucking fetal position and start fighting back. Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, really? It's time for these guys to get out of the way and let the progressives take the reins, because to say we're running out of time isn't hyperbole. It's math. Read your Dickens, and if you don't want to do that, read the 5 non-negotiables. Just go to unftr.com/5NN and let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Because it's time to pick up the fight and take it to them. Here endeth the lesson.
U to the N to the FTR. I'm fucking the Republic, meeting people where they are. Left, right, center, make you laugh, make you cry. Max brings the heat of a basic white guy. That's me. Could've run for office, could've got up off his ass. Hey. Could've made something other than a fucking podcast. But here we are, yo, the UNFTR show. Many faces ripping the script with those fuckers around the globe. On fuckers, on Canuckers, you're a fuckers 99. Down on the fuckers and some fuckers, they out like they fucking minds. From New York to Outagamie, Halifax to New Zealand. Say it loud, say it with me, yo, fuck Milton Friedman.